Hi, I'm Sky, and welcome to Enchantiverse, the podcast dedicated to the wide universe of things that enchant us and make us feel alive. I can't wait to talk about all things magical and beautiful with you. Oh my goodness, welcome back to another episode of the Enchantiverse podcast, guys. I'm really excited about this topic today. I'm also feeling nervous because it's been a while since I posted. It's been a few weeks, and it's not from lack of working on this podcast. It is because this episode has been daunting for me. I love this topic so much, and I'm so excited to talk about it. And I had so many ideas and so much information that it's just been a lot to try and compile it. And the weeks suddenly have flown by, and I'm like, wow, I think it's it's better to get this done than to have it be perfect. And I don't think that I could ever have this be perfect. So I am excited to talk with you guys today about one of my favorite stories of all time, and a story that means a lot to me. The beautiful, the wonderful, the extraordinary Cinderella. Like I said, I had a lot of information going into this. I originally was planning on doing an episode, like a preemptive episode about fairy tales in general and their meaning and some ways of looking at them. And anyway, that turned out to be rather difficult. There's a quote by Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, where he talks about how the history of fairy stories is probably more complex than the physical history of the human race, and as complex as the history of human language. All three things, independent, invention, inheritance, and diffusion, have evidently played their part in producing the intricate web of story. It is now beyond all skill but that of the elves to unravel it. And guys, that is the truth. In studying fairy tales, which I've been studying them for years, and so I thought that it would be much easier to do an episode on fairy tales in general, and I think maybe down the line I will. But it proved to be more difficult. As Tolkien says, there's just so much to talk about. Stories, fairy tales, they're ingrained in society. They're ingrained in the history of the world. It's crazy, and it's cool, and it's amazing. But what I decided to do instead was I think I'm going to do some semi deep dive, or looking into some of the meanings, some of what we can get out of some of these fairy tales, their individual stories, and kind of sprinkle in some of the knowledge I've learned about fairy tales in general over the years and what I've studied into those episodes. So I think I'm going to do, I'll for sure at least do Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. I might do The Little Mermaid, and of course today we're doing Cinderella. They won't probably be coming out in order, like one after another, but they might just be kind of sprinkled in between other episodes throughout the year. So I'm excited. I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I want to dive into it. So before we get into all of the wonderful things we're going to talk about, of course, we're going to do our imagination practice, because it's Enchantiverse and we have to set the mood. And I was talking to someone the other day about imagination and why I'm doing this on each podcast episode. It might feel a little silly. It might feel to some people a little juvenile or weird. And you know what? I don't care. This is important. Imagination is so important, and it's really, really key, I think, to keep it going and to keep imagining every day. And so we're going to do it together because it's fun, and because it improves our day. And I think I'll just read a little quote. There's a lot to say about this. Maybe we'll do another episode on imagination, but I like this quote from Robert Fulghum. It says, "I believe that imagination is stronger than knowledge, that myth is more potent than history, that dreams are more powerful than facts, that hope always triumphs over experience, that laughter is the only cure for grief, and I believe that love is stronger than death." Oh, it's so good and it's so true. Another thing to keep in mind of why we keep on doing these imagination practices and why you should do it every day. Try to imagine yourself somewhere better. Try to imagine life just more magical, is because that is one of the methods that helps you to kind of achieve that mood that you're always wanting, or to achieve even that destiny that you're seeking out for yourself. I love the quote from J.M. Barrie, Peter Pan: "The moment you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever to be able to do it." We need to never doubt that there's more out there. There's beauties to discover. There's knowledge to unfold. There's mysteries to resolve. And there's a lot out there for you. And yeah, this is just something that we're going to do every episode. So I'm going to hop off my little soapbox on that, and we're going to close our eyes. Before you close your eyes, go grab a treat. Go grab something you love, a delicious drink or snack. Get comfortable if you're able to. If you're working, take a deep breath, and wherever you are, just try and take a moment to imagine with me. And I'm going to just say, if you're feeling anything like how I've been feeling lately, you might be a little bit tired, or maybe even a lot bit tired, exhausted from all that you've had to do during your days and weeks. And maybe you feel a little bit like Cinderella, always working and not sure if you're able to make it to the ball. So let's picture ourselves underneath a big, dark sky filled with stars, in a lovely garden. The air is filled with that delicious scent of dampened earth, and you've been working all day out in the garden, serving all of those around you, and you're so tired. Your clothes are covered in dirt. You haven't slept well in days. Your feet hurt too. So you go to sit down to rest for a moment on a stone bench nearby all the growing plants. You take a deep breath, and you wonder if someday all of this hard work will ever pay off. You close your eyes, you let your shoulders lower, releasing the tension from your head to your toes. And with a wish in your heart, you open your eyes and you find that you are surrounded by hundreds of tiny sparkling lights. Doves flutter down from above, and your own fairy godmother appears before your eyes, ready to help you fulfill the longings that you have in your heart. Did you want to go to the ball? Did you want to be seen for your many talents? Or did you simply just want a nice, long, full night's sleep, completely uninterrupted by anything else you have going on? Whatever your wish is, it's about to come true, if you can imagine it. So, with that hopeful, magical tone set for our episode, you can now open your eyes and we'll get started. Okay, Cinderella. Now, as with most fairy tales, what's really cool is that there's always multiple versions of them throughout time and place and culture. So there's lots of different versions of this story as well. There's some from China, ancient China, Egypt, Native America, the Caribbean, so on and so forth. It's a story that it repeats itself, and there's just different versions everywhere. The two versions that I have studied more fully and that I'm going to talk about today are the versions from Charles Perrault and the version from the Grimm brothers. And some of my favorite renditions of the movies that have sprung forth from these renditions, namely the Disney animation and the live action that was directed by Kenneth Branagh in 2015. That's kind of the basis of the Cinderella that we're going to be kind of talking more about today. I want this episode to have some education and some insightfulness, but I also want it to be really fun and magical and focused on the overall spirit and message of the story and the ways that it can add more meaning and beauty to our lives. Wilhelm Grimm once said that the reason for telling fairy tales is to awaken the feelings of the heart. And I think that's really the essence of what this story does. Growing up, I just absolutely loved the Disney animation. It really imprinted itself on my heart, awakening those feelings inside, as I think it has for most people. I didn't know it then, but from my studies of the story, I learned that the Disney animated version is based on the version told by Charles Perrault. And I really like that version. That's the one that has the fairy godmother, the pumpkin turned into the carriage. She has to be back by the strike of 12 midnight. And it's the one that I think most people are mostly familiar with. As I got older, I did discover the Grimm's version, which it does have a lot of similarities, and I think it's similar in its impact as well, but it does have some differences also, which I think are really beautiful, and they add a layered meaning to maybe the version that you're more familiar with. I'm not going to reread the whole versions and compare them. That's not what I think that would be really cool to do, but that's kind of more of a classroom setting. So I would totally encourage you to go and read both versions and more if you would like, but definitely read the Charles Perrault version and then read the Grimm's, and they're both really great. They're both really short and easy, but I am going to talk about some of the differences that stand out mostly to me and that add that magical feeling to my life and make my life feel more enchanted and make me feel alive. That's what this podcast is all about. So I'm going to be getting some of those meanings out of what I take away from them and what I've kind of learned. So in the Charles Perrault version, I'm going to read a little bit. It says, once upon a time, there was a gentleman who married for his second wife the proudest and most haughty woman that ever was seen. She had 2 daughters of her own who were, indeed, exactly like her in all things. The gentleman also had a young daughter of rare goodness and sweetness of temper, which she took from her mother, who was the best creature in the world. Now, that was Charles Perrault. In the Grimm's version, in regard to Cinderella's mother, it says that she told Cinderella these words before she died. She says, "Dear child, be pious and good, and God will always take care of you, and will look down upon you from heaven, and will be with you." So I really like these insights into Cinderella's mother. I think that even though she's absent for most of the story, she has this really big impact on the story as a whole, because she's what influences Cinderella to be so good and to be so kind. And the movie, the 2015 adaptation, I really like it because I feel like you kind of see, even though it's mostly based on the Perrault version, Kenneth Branagh, the director, takes a lot from the Grimm's too. And you see Cinderella's mother in the beginning of that movie. If you haven't seen that movie, go watch it. It's one of my favorite films ever. I absolutely love it. But you see him take a lot from that Grimm's, and they kind of recreate this era that Cinderella had with her mother, and you see how beautiful their family is, and you see that she had this upbringing which was full of goodness and light and beauty. And I really, really like the quote that Cinderella's mother tells her in the movie, and she says, "I want to tell you a secret that will see you through all the trials that life can offer. Have courage and be kind. Ella, you have more kindness in your little finger than most people possess in their whole body. Where there is kindness, there is goodness. And where there is goodness, there is magic." Oh my gosh. When I heard this for the first time, I was in college when I saw this movie. It left a big impact. This story just leaves such an impact. And it touched me. It touched me so much. And even as I continue to return to this movie and to return to this quote, like even reading it over and over, the truth of it just strikes me again and again. Where there is kindness, there is goodness. And where there is goodness, there is magic. I just feel like the older I get, the more I realize the truth of that kindness and goodness, it's magic. It's what makes life magical, and it's what makes life good. And the beauty that life has to offer comes so much from these things. And so I really love that the story starts with this. I know that the two fairy tale versions, they don't have these exact words, but all of the renditions of the myth are playing with each other and building upon each other's meanings. And so I think they're all giving off that essence of that. And I love it. Another thing on Cinderella's mother, there's a moment in the 2015 adaptation where it's young Cinderella and she's with her mom, and they're showing the animals and they're showing their house where they live, and Cinderella's mother teaches her, that we look after the animals, and there's like a little line about that, and Ella says, well, who looks after us? And her mother says, fairy godmothers, of course. And Ella says, and do you believe in them? And Ella's mother says, I believe in everything. And Ella says, then I believe in everything too. And oh, that line too. Oh my goodness. I love that line. Do you believe in them? I believe in everything. The way that she delivers it to the actress, it's just really, it lends itself to the truth of the message, I guess. You feel it. And it always makes me tear up every time I see it, because it's so me. It's so how I feel. I love that idea of belief. And belief, I think, is one of the main elements of this story, Cinderella. It's one of the reasons why I think it's a myth that we return to again and again, and it's one that inspires us, because belief, I think that it's something we sometimes forget about. It's important, I think that it's something that's not super encouraged. I think that the world can be cynical, and I think that the world can be scary, and I think that it can be harsh. And there are people out there that will encourage you not to believe in the things that you believe in, and there will be people out there that encourage you to turn away from what you find true within your heart. And I think that there's also just a sort of attitude that you might find as you go about life, that things are hard. Things are really hard. And sometimes it can kind of squeeze your own belief out of you just by walking through this world in your day to day. I feel that. And so I think that's why it's just such a beautiful line. Like, who looks after us? Fairy godmothers, of course. And do you believe in them? I believe in everything. I like that. I really love the concept of having just a believing heart. The idea of a fairy godmother is basically that there's someone out there. A godmother. What is a godmother? It's someone who looks after you when your parents, if something happens to your parents, they're who's going to take care of you. And fairy, right? It's coming from another realm. So fairy godmother, someone from another realm that will come and look after you if something happens to those who are taking care of you in your life now. Isn't that just a beautiful idea? A fairy godmother. I really like that idea, and I believe in it too. And I think that it's a beautiful thing to believe in. In the Grimm's version, it's kind of cool because it's different, actually. There is no fairy godmother in the Grimm's. I'm going to read a little bit of it. So, backing up just a little bit, the live action movie actually takes a part of the Grimm's version at the very beginning as well. Cinderella's mother, of course, passes away, and the father marries stepmother with the stepsisters, and there's a part where he's going away for work, and he asks Cinderella and he asks the stepsisters what they would like him to bring back for them. And when Cinderella's father asks Cinderella and her stepsisters, the two sisters ask for fine clothes and jewels, but Cinderella tells them that she would like the first branch that brushes his shoulder or strokes upon his hat in the journey. And she says it's because then he'll have to carry it with him and bring it back to her, remember that she's coming home to him and whatnot. Well, in the Grimm's version, he also brings a branch back to her. And Cinderella in the Grimm's version, she takes this branch and she goes to her mother's grave and she buries it there. And every day she waters it with her tears. and the branch is nourished by her watering of it, and it grows and it flourishes into a fine tree. This version says that she goes to the tree 3 times each day to pray, and while she prays, a little white bird comes to listen, and if she utters a wish, he gives it to her. Okay, so let's talk about that. Just like I was talking about the idea of a fairy godmother, this version has a similar kind of essence. You have something winged coming down from another realm, from the heavens, from somewhere else to her aid, just like the fairy godmother, right? This time it's a little white bird. So the Grimm's version is just full of doves. It's full of birds that come and help her. And this version, it's a little bit more religious. She's praying, and when she asks for things, the bird gives it to her. It's definitely lending itself to this idea of prayers being answered. And doves, biblically very symbolic of like the Holy Spirit. I think you can take it a lot of different ways, but that's kind of one of the things that I've seen, right? Moving on in that story. So when Cinderella finally in the Grimm's version wishes to go to the ball, which in this version it's like a 3-day festival, each day her wicked stepmother tells her that if she can pick 2 dishes full of lentils from the ashes of the fireplace, then she can go. So if you can think of that, lentils being thrown into a fireplace and having to like sift it from the ash, it's kind of an impossible task. It's supposed to be just this big burden, right? And because of this, she kind of beckons to the birds, and the white doves come and they help her pick and sort them all out. So you kind of have this idea too of sifting the good from the bad, sifting evil from goodness, or kindness from cruelty. You kind of see these themes, I guess, throughout the story. So the white doves come and they help her pick them and sort them all each time, but her stepmother refuses to let her go. So she runs to her tree and she asks that it pour gold and silver over her. And then she's decked out head to toe in a beautiful gown, and nobody recognizes her in it. But each night the prince sees her and he dances with her and nobody else. And if anybody asks Cinderella to dance, he tells them, "She is my partner." As we know, it's similar in the Perrault version, the one that the animation is based off of. It's similar. But instead, Cinderella gets the fairy godmother to help give her the beautiful dress and go to the ball. And I love both versions. The birds, the fairy godmother, to me, they're really one and the same. They're both symbolic, they're meaningful, they're winged, they're angelic. They come from this higher realm, like I've said. There's something just divine there, something magical. And, pondering just the idea of these gifts given to her, which is the dress, the shoes, the help. These gifts are being given to her from something coming from afar, because something coming from like a different world, right? And I think that it's a beautiful idea. It's definitely a very, very symbolically religious idea, but I love it. I love that idea that in our times of need, that help is given, and that we're given these gifts out of love, out of with the fairy godmother. She's tasked with looking after Cinderella, and you get the idea that she really loves Cinderella and that she wants to help her. And with the doves, they watch her and they love her and they know her and they think she's kind and they help her. And I like that idea. It goes along with so many other, ideas in different cultures and things. There's kind of that idea of karma even. I think it's really cool. And it gives me meaning in my life, that I can kind of be reminded that there's help. That help comes. It's kind of like the idea, I don't know if anyone's heard of this concept before. Tolkien uses it. He uses the phrase eucatastrophe. So there's a essay by J.R.R. Tolkien called On Fairy Stories, and he talks about what makes a fairy story. He does a very excellent job. It's a lot to digest and a lot to think about. I've read it a few times. I love it. But he talks about how usually there is a catastrophe. There's something bad that happens within a fairy tale typically. And he says, but the consolation of fairy tales has another aspect than the imaginative satisfaction of ancient desires. Far more important is the consolation of the happy ending. Almost, I would venture to assert that all complete fairy stories must have it, At least I would say that tragedy is the true form of drama, its highest function, but the opposite is true of fairy story. Since we do not appear to possess a word that expresses this opposite, I will call it eucatastrophe. Eucatastrophic tale is the true form of fairy tale in its highest function. The consolation of fairy stories, the joy of the happy ending, or more correctly, of the good catastrophe, the sudden joyous turn, for there's no true end to any fairy tale. This joy, which is one of the things which fairy stories can produce supremely well, is not essentially escapist nor fugitive. In its fairy tale or otherworld setting, it is a sudden and miraculous grace, never to be counted on to recur. It does not deny the existence of discatastrophe, of sorrow and failure. The possibility of these is necessary to the joy of deliverance. It denies, in the face of much evidence, if you will, universal final defeat. And insofar is Evangelium, giving a fleeting glimpse of joy beyond the walls of the world, poignant as grief. It is the mark of a good fairy story, of the higher or more complete kind, that however wild in its events, however fantastic or terrible the adventures, it can give to child or man that hears it, when the turn comes, a catch of the breath, a beat and lifting of the heart, near to, or indeed accompanied by, tears, as keen as that given by any form of literary art, and having a peculiar quality. That is what you see in Cinderella. And I think that you kind of feel that. I think there's a few moments that you have this eucatastrophe, this sudden turn, the catch of the breath. I think that you feel it twice in this story. Maybe I'm wrong, but this is just my perspective. And one of them is this fairy godmother moment, or this moment with the birds. You think she's not going to be able to make it to the ball. Cinderella wants to go to the ball. She wants to go have a good time. In the live adaptation, she wants to go see her friend, Kit, who she doesn't know is the prince that she met, but she doesn't think she's going to be able to go. And for the first time watching it, I don't even remember the first time I saw this as a child, but one can imagine the first time hearing it, you would be concerned that she's not able to go. And I kind of still feel that every time you feel this when she's still not able to go to the ball. And this eucatastrophe moment of when the fairy godmother comes, when the birds come to help her, it's a beautiful thing. And the reason, again, the way that I find meaning in my life from this moment is just, again, belief that when things seem lost, when things seem like they're not going to work out, after all of my efforts, after all of the things that I've been working hard to do, and it seems like it's all crashing down, I remember this. I remember this story, and that help comes, that things turn around, that despite logic and reason, someone will help me, someone will come, something will happen. I believe in that. And I think that that's a reason why our heart, it awakens this feeling within the heart of, I want to believe in that. I want to hope for that. I want to have a believing heart for that. And it comes usually when all hope is kind of lost. I know, again, in the live adaptation, she says, there's a moment where Helena Bonham Carter comes as the fairy godmother, and she's sort of disguised as like a beggar woman. And she goes to Cinderella and she says, do you have anything to eat? A cup of milk. And Cinderella's crying. Her dress was just torn. She's all torn up and not able to go to the ball after all of her work. And this beggar woman comes and asks for a cup of milk or something to eat. And Cinderella's like, of course. And she pours her a cup of milk, and she says something to her. I can't remember exactly what it is that Helena Bonham Carter, as the fairy godmother, says. But basically Cinderella tells her, I don't believe anymore. I don't believe in fairy godmothers or whatever. And Helena Bonham Carter is like, well, didn't your mother did. She's like, what? She's like, I heard her say it. And then she transforms into the fairy godmother, and it's just a fabulous moment. And I think it's that way with us too, like in life, where again, we're beaten down, whatever scenario, we can feel beaten down after having our hopes so high, and after doing all the work necessary to enjoy something, or to feel like we're making progression, or to feel like we are going to have this magical moment. Things can sometimes not work out, and there can be that, wicked stepmother or wicked circumstances in our life that kind of try to snuff out that belief and that hope and that excitement. So when those times come, I think that our souls and our hearts can draw on stories like this, where we can believe in the eucatastrophe, that this is the story of our life, and that something will come to help us. Something will change, that it will be this just lovely, divine, beautiful moment where we know that someone's looking out for us, and that there's more to life than just what we might see. I really like that idea. There's a quote from G. Ronald Murphy that says, Cinderella is a stand-in for every man. That's true. That is, I think it's one of the reasons why we return to these stories again and again, and why they have impacted and imprinted themselves on the fabric of society, of the fabric of history in the world, nations and cultures. Like I said at the beginning, the story runs through, and you can't even pinpoint the origins. It's that deep, which is just so cool and beautiful to me. But she's a stand-in for every man. Her story is kind of all of our story at one point or another. We're going to love and lose. There will be people in our life that we will love, and someday we might lose them. And we'll go through these trials and hardships. We're going to work ourselves to the bone sometimes. And how do we handle that? And what happens? What are the effects of how we handle that? So let's dive into that a little bit. Something about Cinderella. So like I said at the beginning, her mother tells her to be good, kind, all the different versions of that. Be pious and good, have courage and be kind, goodness and sweetness. The way that Cinderella handles the things that happen to her in life is just beautiful. It is one of the ultimate examples that we have in story. She has very divine, very, very lovely and sublime qualities about her. And I liked the word sublime. The definition of it is of such excellence, grandeur, or beauty as to inspire great admiration or awe, used to denote the extreme or unparalleled nature of a person's attitude or behavior. That is her. She is sublime. She is unparalleled in her nature, her attitude and her behavior. I mean, she loses everything that she holds truly dear. She loses parents. She loses her home. It's overrun by people that she's not familiar with, that she doesn't know, that she doesn't have those those really deep familial ties with, that are unkind to her to a really extreme extent. She is basically outcast to the attic to live, and she becomes the servant. She becomes the maid in her own home, where she grew and she flourished, and she was taught and belonged to her. It was all taken from her. And I think that, today that I don't think it's as encouraged to handle these kinds of things with the level of meekness that she handles it. She is kind to those who abuse her. She is forgiving, and she is loving, and she does the work asked of her, and she is never conniving to the people who are actively abusing her. And that's a really hard concept. It's one that's also really hard for me to wrap my mind around, because I want to say, fight back, you kind of want her to fight back, but you love her for how she handles the situation as well. Yeah, you love her for it. You love her for her beautiful character, and that she continues to be kind. And it, again, I think there's some symbolism. There's some like definite like Christian undertones of the turn the other cheek, forgiving, 70 times 7. Like there's a lot of that. The only other character I can really think of, in all honesty, that is reminding me of this is Christ, is Jesus Christ. Like that idea of not doing anything wrong, being kind and loving and good, and yet being abused, and wrongfully abused, having things taken from you, and having things being mistreated. And of course it's different in the Christian story, what happens to Christ, but in a way there's still that there's that youth catastrophe in both stories as well. But that's the only other character I can, off the top of my head, that it's the one that's coming to mind. She has this Christ-likeness about her, where she really takes that to heart, and she turns the other cheek, and it is beautiful. I think it's something inspiring to me. I recently I've been dealing with needing to learn to forgive someone, and not knowing how in this particular situation, and really struggling with it. And I love this story. It's on my mind often, and I had recently watched the 2015 adaptation, and of course I've been studying the story a lot lately, and it has helped me. It has helped me to forgive in a situation where I've felt betrayed and wronged in certain ways. And that betrayal is it's a really hard feeling to go through. Abuse or being tricked, like, the stepmother, she tricks, or being gaslit, or being, when you know that you're being mistreated, it's really hard. It's really hard to move past it. It's hard to forgive. And again, that doesn't mean trusting again. It doesn't mean that you have to even have the same relationship with that person that you had once before or whatnot. But to be able to forgive and move on, and to be kind. That's something that stood out to me, because I had been questioning, how to go about even interacting. It stood out to me, that this message, and it was really good for me in the moment, just that have courage and be kind. I can do that. I can be kind, even though that I felt betrayed by someone, right? I can be kind. And I just think it's a lovely, inspiring message that I'm just impressed with Cinderella, and all the versions of her, and all the stories of her. It's just impressive. And I think that's another reason why we come back to it again and again, because it's not what we're usually told. I think that we're usually told to bite back, and I think we're usually told to be petty. Yeah, there's a lot of that. That's kind of applauded, and I see all the different. It's not to say anyone who's been petty before, who's bit back, like, I don't think that's what I lend myself to usually do too. We all have, that's the instinct. I'm just saying that the story kind of inspires you to choose something else that actually feels really freeing and feels really good. It gives you peace. It gives you peace. So I love that. I love that about Cinderella, that she's so kind and loving amidst her trials, and amidst her grief, and amidst her betrayals in her life. There's a clip that I really love of Kenneth Branagh, the director of the 2015 adaptation, where he talks about his version of the film being uncynical, and about how they went about filming that I really like, that I'm going to play.
I guess I'm an optimist. I guess I'm romantic. I guess that, I really care about the girl. I really care about the girls in it. And I care about them being, as fully fleshed out as this entertainment gives room to present. And also I felt that it was just, in a way, one of the most difficult things and most interesting things to do was to present someone who listened to her mother who said, have courage and be kind, and didn't see that as a glib kind of piece of cracker philosophy, but saw it as a practical means by which you could lead your life, even if it is inevitably difficult. It's easy to say, hard to do, can seem trite, can seem dull, can seem silly, can seem unsophisticated, can seem naive, and yet I don't believe it's any of those things. I do believe it's hard to present that in the world in a way that isn't mockable. And so how do you do it? You do it with the shining example of someone who not only has that belief, but who conveys it and who lives it. And we needed a remarkable actress to do that, and Lily James does it, and an atmosphere in which this simple resolve, which includes in her desire to be, kind and have courage, sexiness, intelligence, fun, wit, wry. She can be sarky, she can even be snarky. But the basic desire to see the good in people, to think generously about other people, whether that begins with simply smiling at the beginning of your day and dealing with it if somebody doesn't smile back at you, and feeling that those tiny, silly contributions, in fact, make an enormous cumulative difference to the world and the space and the oxygen that you occupy. And we set that alongside people who are very clear about their desire for things. They want money, they want a guy, they want freedom, they want clothes, they want superior social position, they want to be recognized as being better than other people, and that desire is making them unhappy. And so the choices about what you might do are implicitly in there, and it was, and also because at the heart of the story is basically bullying. They bully her, and even on the most simple level of how you deal with bullying. For me, the interesting thing about it was to respond with, as Gandhi might have put it, sort of non-violent resistance, and she follows that path, even in a fairy tale, in a way that I think was really interesting to try and bring off, because it's a world that can be dead cynical about that. The film is uncynical.
I could just listen to him talk all day. I've probably listened to hours and hours of footage of Kenneth Branagh talking about this movie, because he is so poetic, he is so insightful, he really studied the fairy tale, you can tell, and I love what he said. I think that's why the movie is so good, because he is an optimist, he is a romantic, he was able to see her character and really, like he said, convey her in a way that was beautiful, and that was that optimistic, that uncynical, lovely character that she had. He just made her this shining example, and he really conveyed the fairy tale so beautifully and so well, and I just loved it. I loved his work on this movie. I'm gonna play a few more clips as we go, but nail on the head. I won't reiterate him, but he describes basically Cinderella's character, and it's exactly how I want to be. Like the way he describes her, that's how I want to be described. That's how I wish the world was. I wish that's how we all could be. And I know it's hard. It's not what I'm saying, but I just wish it's the way that the world worked. I really liked what he said too about being in a world where she's surrounded by people who want things. It's interesting. They want things. They want the clothes. They want the jewels. They want the guy. They want these tangible things. And he's very kind also to the stepmothers and the stepmother and the stepsisters. He talks about how, it makes sense. They're in a world where they're very vulnerable. They need to secure a living. They need to secure a way forward. They're living in a time where that's what they need. And so they're also a representation, I think, of all of us too, where we have these fears. We want to be taken care of. We don't want to go without. We want to be secure, And so you have these two examples of how to handle yourself really, when you're faced with these challenges. The challenge is the dad died. Now what? I mean, imagine being in the stepmother's position, right? Like living in a time where you can't take care of yourself, where it's the man who provides, where you're not allowed to work, even back in most of the renditions of this fairy tale, right? And so you're faced with this idea of, how am I going to survive? How am I going to live and get things? And how that can turn you even more cynical and even more mean-hearted. And then you have Cinderella, who's faced with the exact same challenges and even more grief, and yet she handles herself so lovingly, and she is good to the people around her, and she doesn't try to be conniving, and she doesn't try to trick, and she doesn't misuse the people who are around her. And so again, it's this beautiful lesson, I think, for us. I think that this fairy tale also deals a lot with the concept of beauty, and what does it mean to be beautiful? What is beauty? It's a really good question. I mean, we know that in the fairy tale, they're called often the ugly stepsisters. And I think it even mentions, it's talking about their hearts. It's talking about what's inside. It's not talking about the outward. In fact, in a lot of the renditions that I know, in the Kenneth Branagh rendition, they're beautiful girls. Beautiful. And they're all decked out in fine clothing, and they're all decked out in their hair and their makeup and their everything. They're gorgeous. It's what's inside that's ugly. And Cinderella, as her name denotes, she's covered in cinders. She's sleeping by the fire because it's too cold in her attic where she's been cast off to. So she goes and lays by the fire after a long, hard day's work, and every day she's covered in the ashes from the fire, the cinders from the fire, which is what gives her name. And so again, if Cinderella is a stand-in for every man, what does that mean? She's given these gifts from above, from the fairy godmother, from the doves. She's given this beauty to put on. She's given the golden shoes. She's given the glass shoes, the glass slippers. It's different versions have different words for it. She's given the beautiful dress. And when she meets the prince, he doesn't want to dance with anyone else because she's the most beautiful. I think there's some Christian symbolism there. The prince, not in all fairy tales, is a representation, I think, of Christ, but in some. And this one, I think, is one where it's pretty, you can read it that way, where it's the king's son who sees the girl who no one else recognizes, and he sees her beauty she's clothed, basically. She's clothed in these heavenly gifts. She's clothed in kindness. She's clothed in meekness. She's clothed in humility and in love and charity and hope and belief, right? Those are the clothes she wears. Those are the gifts that she wears. And he recognizes her, and he doesn't want to dance with anyone else. It in a way is a retelling of the Christian story of, we're sent to live, to work hard, to have trials and disappointments and downfalls, but help along the way, and ultimately to meet the prince. That's the Christian story, right? I think that no matter what your beliefs are, you can find meaning in this story. I think that, you can read it in a lot of different ways. Whether that's, we all live the same life. We're all here. We all encounter trials. We all encounter challenges, like I said, and have these choices of what we're going to do, and ultimately to meet or to find our happy endings. Whether that just be goodness coming to you, to your life, whether that be whatever your belief system. But I do think that it can be read with that kind of Christian symbolism of, you want to be the one with whom the slipper fits, because as we know, Cinderella dances with the prince and he wants her. And this story really is not talking about this outer beauty. It's all focused on the inner beauty. The prince wants what's in her heart, and he searches for her, and he searches and searches. And this slipper that he has that is symbolic of her beautiful gifts, of her nature, it's not fitting anyone. He wants the one with whom the slipper fits, and he's going around and it's just not fitting, and when he finds her, it fits. And so it's this even if it's a subconscious sort of reminder that we want to be that one. We want to be the one with who fits into that shoe of that inner beauty, right? And again, I know not everyone listening all shares the same beliefs. I'm not here to really talk about or try to convince anyone of any beliefs, but I am here to look at what makes life more magical, and what we can find, how we can find more meaning in our lives. And we're all in different, we all have different beliefs, and we all have different ideologies. And I think that that's one way to read it. And I think that you can also read it, goodness, that beauty, that blessings and gifts, they come to us when we are living in that beautiful way, when our heart is full of beauty, when our inside is just full of light and goodness and kindness and hope and belief, right? I think that's one of the things that the story is teaching. And yeah, that idea of beauty, I really like there's a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he says, "Beauty is the mark that God sets upon virtue." So basically, and that's basically Cinderella in a nutshell, right? Beauty is the mark that is set upon her because of her virtue, her goodness, her character. So I love that. I love that. I love that. I love also that, in that live action adaptation, I think another reason why it's so good is because Kenneth Branagh, he says that he assumes the audience's intelligence. He was questioned, why don't you could have gone a different way with this film, basically. You could have had a talking sidekick. You could have had it be a bit different than it ended up being, because the film is just so classic. It's so... he sticks to the fairy tale. He really sticks to the fairy tale, and you get the meaning of it. And he even shows us more of that, which is such a gift. And he says, one of the things that they really want to do is just assume the audience's intelligence, that this is something for children, this is something for adults, this is something we can all take away something from.
We were also trying to find in performances a kind of simplicity. I mean, we had plenty going on before introducing necessarily a whole range of other kind of tricks that might, as it were, keep the audience's attention. I think we respect the audience's intelligence. We assume the audience's intelligence, and that assumption involves believing that, as much as I loved Frozen or anything else that's entirely different, that there are some experiences where you might want to just go on this particular version of the ride, however you describe it, purer, simpler, cleaner, whatever. It just is what it is, but it's different.
I love that line that he said about assuming the audience's intelligence, because that's what I want. I always want that from a film. I always want that from a book, from a story. I always want to feel like the author or the director or whoever the creator was assuming that I have the ability to understand what's going on, that I have the ability to appreciate their art. And I think that fairy tales are very deep and very meaningful. I think that it can be easy for people who are retelling them to think that they have to over-explain, or that they have to make it more modern or update it in some way in order for a modern audience to understand. I completely disagree with that. I think that the tales in and of themselves are amazing. And I like what he did with this particular film, because he expanded it. He just showed us more of what that classic tale was. He didn't change it. He just gave us even more insight, even more. He made a beautiful film out of it. And I loved it. I love it. I also wanted to touch on the idea of hope. Hope and belief, I think, are really similar, but I think hope is a little different. There's a quote from G.K. Chesterton that I love where he says, "Hope is the power of being cheerful in circumstances that we know to be desperate." And that is so true. That is so good. And it's so Cinderella. Hope is the power of being cheerful in circumstances that we know to be desperate. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do. Recently, when I started out planning this episode, I was feeling so wistful and romantic and cheerful and hopeful, and life was seeming really good. And it was funny because as I continue to plan the episode over the past few weeks, life has just been a little bit more difficult, and I've felt that pull to be anxious and that pull to be worried and to fear. And when I feel fearful and when I feel worried, I feel stressed, and I feel it's very easy to not be cheerful, which means it's very easy to not be hopeful and to feel like things are crashing down, or to feel like there's no solution to the problems that we face. And it was a really good reminder to me as I was studying the story, because it was helping me so much to remember Cinderella's story, and to think about that quote, that hope is the power of being cheerful in circumstances that we know to be desperate. And I fought with all my heart during these times that I was feeling overcome with this anxiety, to just be cheerful, continue to just believe in that eucatastrophe moment, that everything was going to be okay. And that I hoped that I was really working on hope. And it was a lifesaver. Like, hope is the best thing ever. I love hope. I love it. Again, it makes my life better. And I just want to share these things because that's what this podcast is. I started this podcast, wanted to start it during a time that everything seemed dark. And when I was inspired to do this, because I wanted so badly to feel alive, because the darkness, when it comes in, it can feel so all-consuming, and it makes you feel so dead inside. And that's what I think fear does to me, and that's what I think my worrying does to me. And I want us to just keep feeling alive. And so hope does that. Hope really makes you feel alive, because it's a fight. Hope is strength, truly. It is just refusing to let darkness take over in your mind. It really is. And it's hard to do, but I think that continuing to hope, it adds magic, pure magic to life. Of course, at the end of Cinderella, we have, like I brought up before, the prince searching for her and wanting to find her and wanting to give her that happily ever after that she so desperately needs. And he's searching for her, and she's still, the stepmother's trying to hide her from her destiny, which is happiness and goodness in life. And the prince won't let up. He's not going to let up for her. He finds her eventually, and she, of course, the slipper fits, and she gets her happily ever after. And how beautiful that is, and how important that is to believe in, that happily ever afters can come our way, that they will come our way in one way or another. And I think that for those out there who are believers in the Christian tradition, there's again that really beautiful added meaning that there is someone out there seeking after you. There is someone out there that wants to take you home, wants to give you that happily ever after, And for us, that's Christ himself, that that throughout our life and throughout the struggles, we're being sent these gifts from above and help along the way through all of the hard things that happen. But that when we're putting on those divine gifts, when we're living in the way that is kind and courageous and meek and full of charity and love, that's what is so beautiful. And that at the end of our story, that there is someone seeking us out. There is someone who is trying to give us our happily ever after into the next life and bring us home to his Father's house. And that he will recognize us by the way that we have followed him and lived our life in accordance to those commandments of love, faith, charity, hope. I love that this story kind of subconsciously sinks that message into our souls. And for those not in the Christian tradition, I think that it still all rings true. I think that we have hope, that there is goodness out there seeking us and wanting us, and that won't let up until it finds us. And lots of symbolism there. You can look at it in so many different ways, and just that belief that good people, good things, goodness itself, it's coming for you, and it is your destiny when we are choosing to have courage and be kind, when we're choosing to be good and to be filled with hope and love and belief and that inner beauty. And I love that. I love it. There's nothing better than a happily ever after. I really like from the Disney animation, that song, A Dream is a Wish Your Heart Makes. Just that importance to dream. It kind of goes into my little soapbox at the beginning of why imagination is so important. Dreaming, it's so important. It's so important because it allows you to imagine something better. It allows you to give yourself permission to believe that there's more for you. And so I like that song, that a dream is a wish your heart makes when you're fast asleep. In dreams, you will lose your heartaches. Whatever you wish for, you keep. Have faith in your dreams, and someday your rainbow will come smiling through. No matter how your heart is grieving, if you keep on believing, the dreams that you wish will come true. And it's true, my friends. It's so true. There's so much beauty and life and goodness out there for you. So much. I know that life is so hard sometimes. Sometimes we feel like Cinderella. We feel like we are slaving away and working so hard and things just aren't going our way. Continue to dream. Keep imagining, keep dreaming, keep believing. The beauties that you wish for, they will come true. The dreams that you wish for will come true. And whatever you wish for, you keep. And the beautiful thing about dreaming and the beautiful thing about continuing to believe is that within those challenges that we face, we feel lighter. We feel our hearts are lifted. It's like that idea of hope I was talking about earlier, that choosing to be cheerful amidst challenges. You feel better. You feel the magic, you feel the magic, and you feel more alive. And it's a fight. Like I said, it's a fight. It's a beautiful, wonderful, peaceful way of fighting back against the overshadowing, all-consuming darkness and trials that the world can sometimes thrust upon us, and that life can sometimes thrust upon us. And so, yeah, that I guess is where I will end. Keep on believing, keep dreaming. I really hope that, I know like this was definitely not, I guess, like I said, I wasn't going to read all the versions of the fairy tales to you guys today, but I hope that you did learn something new that you maybe didn't know before. I hope that it was like helpful in some way. I hope that as you guys go about your week, that you feel alive, that you feel hopeful, that you feel romantic and wistful. I hope that if there's a ball that you're trying to go to, that you get to go. I hope that if there is a dream that you're dreaming, that it comes true so soon. And I believe that it will for you. And I hope that you will believe. And I hope that you will continue to hope and dream and keep having courage and being kind. Because that is truly, truly, truly where magic is found. And I love you all so, so much. Thank you for listening. If you like this podcast, please, please leave me 5 stars wherever you're listening. Leave a review if you can. Subscribe to my YouTube channels. You can follow me on Instagram at Enchantiverse, where I post the links to these podcasts and where I post all the things that I'm working on, whether it's paintings or writing or whatever. That's where you can find me. So please, if you will, rate this 5 stars, leave a review, let me know your thoughts, and follow me so that we can be friends, because I actually really want to connect with you guys. I actually really want to be friends. Anyway, I love you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night, and may your dreams be full of magic.